Hello viewers, this is Lee-Cherun. Today I'm going to talk about something I heard from my own experience. If I were to sum it up in one word, it's 2022 in 2022.
With my family.
Together for 23 years, we'll do it again. Today, for this time, it seems like Amma is making her first appearance on YouTube. She has appeared on television a lot, but this is her first time appearing on a personal YouTube channel. I will go.
To celebrate the opening,
Today as well, at Jaegoyang, we serve Lee I Rayong tea and Kim I Rayong tea.
Hello, I'm Kim Myung.
I got to know you through Imangak, and when we met at Imangak, I also said that I came from Hwanghae-do after watching the broadcast, so I felt a sense of kinship. Many people from Hwanghae-do have come here and met each other, right?
I've met quite a few.
So what kind of jobs did you have in North Korea?
When you say job in North Korea, do you mean a social job or do you mean a job related to production?
I had a social job and also did work for a living.
I did both.
And on top of that,
Regarding that, let me tell you in detail. Our viewers, please listen. As for that, I can't say for sure and I can't say for certain, but I'll try to explain as best as I can.
you have to understand that what you do for a living and what you do to make money are often combined as one job, even if you don't want them to be. But, jobs can be very different and people often change workplaces a lot. So you can't really say that one job is always done in one place. That's why people end up changing jobs so much. If you go to a certain workplace, you might think you won't stay there long, so you start thinking about other things. Or maybe it's because I'm more of a progressive type.
As someone who has also lived in Hwanghae-do, my hometown is Yeonan. I used to farm in Cheongdan, but in Hwanghae-do, Yeonan, Baeheon, Cheongdan, Gangryang, and Okjin are all great places to reside.
In a place where the sea is close,
Since you live by the sea and eat seafood, people say Gangryang is a good place to live. What was life really like there back then?
at that time, it was during the coronavirus period, so it was a very tough time. It was very difficult economically, and a lot of people were just barely getting by. It was hard to find work, and there were many people who lost their jobs or had to close their businesses. It was a really tough time for many people, directly due to Corona.
To be honest, we in South Korea only hear about the situation in North Korea through the media, so we don't really know the truth. There are rumors, but what was the actual coronavirus situation like in North Korea when it happened? I couldn't really find out the details either.
The coronavirus period was like a second arduous march, resulting in many deaths. Even before that, the arduous march period spanning the mid-1990s to 2000s saw a high number of people dying as well. Back then, even during the arduous march, there weren't as many people dying from famine as there are now. That's how much I know about it, to be honest. Even in Donghae and in the refugee camps, when you go there, the refugees are counting the statistics. Nungun's father died, Nungun's child died, Nungun's grandmother died. That's how most of the stories were about people dying. After starving to death or trying to survive, you would go to someone else's house to beg for food, but if you ran into the owner, you couldn't do anything. They would even kill people to get away. There were countless murder cases along the river, and it was terrible. The people's hearts were as desolate as a wasteland.
I know why he was killed. There was an incident like that in Jagakit.
They didn't say he died from corona, and there were all kinds of reports and rumors in the neighborhood, but they never said it was because of corona. They said he died from poisoning, and that it was because of poisoning, or maybe from a drug overdose, so that's why he died from complications. That's how the word got out. Honestly, I also caught the flu, and I know how it feels. It was during the time of corona. Yes, I also knew about corona. At that time, it wasn't a serious illness, but it was hard to see it just as the flu. The symptoms were so severe that my whole body ached, and I felt like I had no energy at all. That's how bad it was. I had a high fever, and even before the flu, I had never felt that sick before. Since I never had that before, I thought, this must really be a very strong illness. But since it wasn't officially announced as corona, people just thought, is this really corona? There were these kinds of doubts.
So even in North Korea until recently, the official media said that there were no confirmed cases of corona. Isn't that because North Korea is a clean country? So in North Korea, even if you get corona, they say you didn't get it. Once you go into quarantine, that's the end of it. So there were even rumors that people died from corona in the facilities. Yes, at that time, there were areas or regions in North Korea that were locked down due to coronavirus disease. 2019.
That's right.
That's right. They strengthened the restrictions on movement between regions with the district law, and if you tried to move during Corona, it was considered a historical event. It's not that I wanted to move, but because of the district law, everyone had to follow the social restrictions and act accordingly. That's the only way to block the spread of the coronavirus itself. Even with those measures, if the coronavirus spreads, the country can't easily handle it.
At that time in Pyongyang.
They are considered criminals. So those who get coronavirus are treated as criminals in this context.
No, that's not the case.
I was selected as a corpse, and those who got corona are buried in this land.
There is no qualification.
What nonsense is that? Saying if you get corona, it's your fate, that's just history. But that's how the local law was enforced.
That's nonsense, isn't it? How can you say it's just fate if you get corona? Does that even make sense?
The whole world isn't easy. It's a situation where you can't even talk about it, but somehow that's just how it is in this society. And in that society,
the very problem with an unhealthy system is that it allows things that shouldn't be permitted while preventing things that should be permitted. In North Korea, it's hard to turn hope into reality despite believing it's possible.
No, I didn't.
I couldn't get married in North Korea.
Waibu Shinbun is a Nokjangwon official. At that time, they just said it like that, bringing the workers together and making the farmers memorize these words. After work, they would do this, and on the other hand, the laborers would gather the farmers and make them recite slogans.
They often called them surai, the farmhands.
The word sure for farmhands sounds a bit funny and awkward, but that's what they called them, and it shows the hierarchical relationship and the sense of distance they had between each other.
Even in Hwanghae province, there were a lot of farmers. And in the lower regions, since there was a lot of farmland and a lot of farming, there were many farm owners and many farm workers. You probably know North Korea well, but isn't there a class system there? The gap between the working class and the farming class is severe. So when workers say they are farmers, people tend to look down on them a little.
They object a lot. Even though men tend to judge based on looks deep down, I don't think they only date people who look good. But still, appearance is very important in most cases. But even if there are people who live like that, even if it's rare, I think people secretly envy them from behind. Now, they might say, I wouldn't do that, but deep down, they wish they could live like that too. When it happens, people tend to gossip, criticize, and judge them behind their backs, asking questions like, why would they do that? Are they lacking something? This leads to the spread of rumors and criticism fueled by envy.
That's the case. Only Yone.
Well, that's what happened. I dated, but I also dated and even lived together.
When did you date? I also tried dating in Bukhan. But the way people talk and the way they live are very different. So, if you say things like this, you might get misunderstood, but I tried to be as pure as possible when I was dating.
It went really smoothly. So,
women approached me and dating. It's just that, to be honest, I used to attend a very conservative church before. Since elementary school, I knew graduating college would lead to a security department assignment. So when women speak honestly, they say that in North Korea they marry soldiers, and seeing that, many women want to become soldiers. That's how it is.
Our Cheon Hoon Hyung was just amazing. Women used to come looking for him, you know?
It couldn't be helped. That's just how people are. They're all instinctive creatures. But I didn't really know much about people who dated on that side. But I also wonder if there's a different dating culture over there.
The atmosphere was much brighter than before. So
lately,
these days, it seems like more men are starting than women.
Right now, the atmosphere is...
It's true that women started it, but now it seems like men themselves are more eager to get married than women. It's not 100% exactly like that, but there is definitely that kind of atmosphere. These days, people in their 20s and 30s, not just those in their early 30s, but even those in their late 20s, have been influenced a lot by the culture of Korea. So I think that's why it's like this. The influence of Korea is huge, the influence of Korean culture. Men prefer women who are a bit innocent.
And propose to them.
They like women who accept their proposal in a good mood.
There are also proposals.
They don't officially propose, but they know the concept of a proposal. Even when young lovers gather at home, they ask, hey, how did you propose? If you listen to stories among the many couples, there are some who get married quickly, and there are some who meet their partners after a long time. Later, when I met someone in the middle, I felt like I had to propose now that I had a girlfriend, so I thought I should do it too. When I heard their stories, I also asked around like that. But at that time, I didn't use the word proposal in English, but I wondered what it was called. I didn't use the official word proposal in conversation, but I knew the concept of a proposal.
There were a lot, yes, a lot.
That's right.
In North Korea, I already moved around a lot, you know. When I was in college, there were people who were active in moving around. I served in the military in North Korea, and when I turned 24, I got married.
At the same time, please.
If you look, there were also warehouses in front of the square, and if you go down the alley next to the apartment wall, there were people running businesses there. But are there still a lot of people running businesses there now?
That's how the old people lived. The housing prices are still high, comparable to the situation in Korea. It's about the same level here as well. Of course, the environment is different, but it's not like before, and it's really hard to buy a house. Even in Korea, if you want to buy a house, unless you have some kind of inherited wealth or something, it's really difficult for young people to enter the market.
정말 나이.
It's challenging to purchase a home solely with savings, even if you save until retirement. That's the current reality. Even if you just save money diligently in North Korea, the price of a house itself is so high that it's hard to even rent a place or get your own home with that money. If that's the case.
The person who started doing that was none other than my parents.
Because they opposed it, basically. My parents tried to control as much as possible, basically. There were also social and legal issues. Despite social and legal issues, my parents' disapproval was the main reason. I had no need to live independently, considering factors like high school.
How did you handle it?
No, that's not a problem you can solve right away. So I just left it to the parents' judgment for the time being.
Ah, right.
It's not like I became a teacher just because I wanted to be one. To get approval from the parents,
To get their recognition and to gain their trust.
I worked really hard to get their approval. I put in a lot of effort. But even so, when the parents were at home, I would get nervous and try to avoid them.
When it's like that.
So you have to receive both congratulations and criticism. But honestly, I'm just going around the neighborhood like this. But as I go around, I become someone who greets people.
Even when I lived in the neighborhood before, did you ever imagine how difficult it was to make a living back then?
First of all, I was a civilian. I was not a member of the party or anything like that.
I wasn't.
There was nothing special. I was just an ordinary civilian. But even among civilians, I was at the bottom.
I was at the bottom of the civilian class. When I saw myself on television, I thought, oh, I'm on television now. And I was happy. In our country, in rural areas, people usually ride tractors or their own cars. But in the north, everyone rides motorcycles, even the officials. In South Korea, riding a motorcycle isn't a big deal since everyone drives cars. However, in North Korea, riding a motorcycle is as rare as driving a Rolls Royce in South Korea. So when I mentioned riding a motorcycle in North Korea, it was considered a significant achievement, unlike in South Korea where it's common. Yes, that's really undeniable, but if you think about it, life was really tough there. Life was so hard, so how did you end up coming to South Korea?
That's how it happened. I didn't leave solely due to a sudden party crisis. Life in the north was really tough and difficult, and amidst that hardship, I realized I couldn't continue like that, so I decided to leave. What was your situation like? A lot? To be honest, if I were to tell you in detail, I didn't have any freedom at all. I was always dissatisfied with the oppressive system.
Yes.
I was dissatisfied with the regime. And there were a lot of things like that. Every day I was constantly controlled and restricted. I couldn't do my desired work, and even my assigned tasks were restricted by the system. What kind of work did you end up doing? I was in the finance business. Finance.
I was in the same neighborhood. My neighborhood was in Ulsan, but that neighborhood was also in the gold mining business in Ongjin mining area.
Yes.
My place was Ongjin Mine.
Yes, I was working at Ongjin Mine and then I got caught. That was the system. They said it was a collective farm. I didn't really know, but they said it was a collective farm, so I ended up working in mining. The livestock division is now separated, and since I know about it now, I tried to raise pigs, so I know about pig farming. In cases like mine, even if you want to farm, because of the region, you can't make a living through farming. So how did you make a living? There was a time when I thought I had to go through the border.
That was natural. I've seen a lot on television about people escaping North Korea and crossing the border.
So from there,
I could figure out the route, but the journey was really long. If I were traveling alone, I could have walked quickly, but since I had to travel with my family, it was different. If you go there, sometimes you can't hear the bell well, so in the middle of the meal, someone might suddenly get up or something unexpected might happen. When that happens, there are a lot of situations where you can't do anything about it. The atmosphere over there wasn't particularly good, so the area where I was living was just right at the border.
So here,
If you just cross the water, it's as close as the distance from the outskirts of Incheon to Bupyeonga.
that's how close it was. So
It was such a short distance that you could cross it in just a few days, so they wanted to use this short distance to cross the sea and invade right away. Well, that was their original plan.
so did General Tanbuk really make that decision?
I started preparing for the escape in earnest and continued until the end. So the actual time I spent on the escape was about 6 months.
6 months? I also prepared for about 6 months. But for me, it only took 3 days to get out. Since you mentioned going to Korea, does that mean someone in your family became a water supplier for the North Korean military?
The moment we decided to go to Korea, I started to have hope and dreams. That was my dream. The reason I started thinking about going to Korea and actually took action following my thoughts was because of my father's influence. Yes, that's right. We had to wait around 15 years for that. In fact, looking at it,
For 15 years, my father had been thinking about that and holding on to that thought.
yes, that was part of my father's plan. The children didn't live right next to us. They weren't our real grandchildren.
But the seaside.
We once looked after our younger sibling, that's why. Send them to the beach. I couldn't go, so I worked at a nearby fish market or did other jobs. And after finishing my work at the dock, I stayed there until the tide came in. I was always among the original workers, so I naturally learned the skills and continued like that.
Abiyanim's influence drove me to keep drawing that picture. For 15 years, I started from there when the big election came.
So for 15 years, I kept drawing that big picture and started, but I didn't just grab the plan and rush forward. I didn't rush, I took it step by step. You have to show the boys that you're just quietly loyal to the party, that you're always on the side of An Hwan, that you're a little on my side, and that you're always loyal to the party. So just don't act rashly and don't make them suspicious. That period could last 5 years, it could last 10 years, but don't rush and don't act hastily. I spent 15 years in prison for what happened, but the sentence was excessive given the circumstances that led to the events. Since it was an important matter and because Mr. Abe also passed away, it took even longer for things to unfold.
It was a very close relationship, and I also left so I can say this, but since Mr. Abe passed away, honestly, there's no reason for me to come back to Korea. I never had the thought that Mr. Abe would have to come to Korea. Frankly, Mr. Abe never really painted that grand vision, making it difficult for him to visit. In a way, it always left me with a tinge of regret. That's right.
My heart aches. When I was in Pyeongso, Mr. Abe, who was with me, said he had to go back to Korea, so I heard that a lot and the situation was different. Our colleagues were in the administration in North Korea. A line leader is someone who takes on direct tasks and while working, if there are any issues, he solves them himself or coordinates with other line leaders to resolve them. If you follow the process in the party, you get orders and instructions directly from above and you receive your living expenses from the party. I heard he did well and he was even given a car and a driver. He was in that kind of position. When I looked at social issues, there was no such thing as fairness with just one word.
and economically as well.
There was no deprivation or unreasonable discrimination. So in that situation, people wondered, do we really need to break the balance?
In that situation,
I have to say, I experienced a lot of ups and downs. Our Dongzeng started out by graduating from middle and high school in Hamadiro, and then, thanks to Abionim's influence, he went straight to the Badasga, worked there for a while, and for a few years he received the support of Abionim's friends. Those friends took care of our dongseng, taught him the ropes, and after that, when that period ended, then after that our father took care of our dongseng, let him stay at our house and tried to help him out. But because of the difficult situation, our father ended up going back. My mother worked hard to make money and bought a boat by saving up every penny. So that boat was the one we used when we first started, and it was a small wooden fishing boat. My parents built that boat at home, and then for several years, about 10 years, our family used that boat to make a living.
That's it. Beautiful.
Buell bought 2 bags with the money she earned in 2018. It wasn't all my money, and I also borrowed some, even my mother's money.
The people who lent me money.
To put it in detail, I'll explain that situation differently.
I can't do it,
But I think there was a bit of a financial struggle as well. Before, whenever I started something new, I always made a promise to myself, and every time I told myself that our peers have their own social support as well. I thought there were no problems and that we were living well now, but right then, our younger sibling was the only one who really cared for us.
So that's why.
In the early 2000s, when I first came to Korea, we mostly cooked and ate homemade meals at home during our 20s. So, do you know Kim Hee-woong right away?
He was a person, you know.
Han Madiro, with a way.
Dongseng's nickname.
He was smart, talented, and had abilities. So even back then, he wasn't just an ordinary kid. He did things in his 20s that even adults couldn't do. He took on risky jobs, made deals, and lived through all sorts of situations. So he was a much greater person than I thought. So since he was already in such a high position, I never imagined that he would fall or lose everything. First of all, since that's the case, I need to explain my situation a little bit when I first met him. But from the very beginning, I couldn't adapt to school. And I struggled with my studies all the way until graduation. So I kept running away, following the orders of the elders, but even as I was running away, I would look back and see that the situation was very tense. Because of that situation, when I went somewhere, I couldn't get recognition from the adults. So I didn't want to just get financial support from my parents or rely on them like that. I wanted to do things on my own and be independent.
Han Madiro in the Korean style.
To put it simply, just do as you want, that's the kind of mindset it was. But for me, I don't have that kind of support to just recklessly push forward.
So just,
If you ask me, I just live while enduring hardships. So there's nothing I haven't tried. The things I did at first,
catching and raising pigs.
I would catch pigs with a lasso, tie them up, and deliver them to restaurants. That's what I did. In the north, they call me the pig master.
Please call me Bulja in Korean.
Because my name is Pyo Hyun Han, people called me the supplier and the pig master, which is what they call it in North Korea. That was my first job. I did that when I was 15 or 16 years old. After that, I started lending money. I would lend money, collect interest, and then use that money to buy more pigs. At that time, I saved up the money and then started a business at the market with the money I had saved. While doing that, I also sold goods. Every time I had to bribe the police or security officers at the market. It was always the case.
So that's why I had to do that.
So I had to keep making a living, take care of the kids, and maintain relationships with people. But I had to hide my true feelings and not show what I was really going through. So in that situation, I felt like I was losing more than I was gaining. So living in this situation, I kept feeling a sense of alienation from society as a whole. So for me, as I went through all these things, whether it was working or running a business, whenever I faced obstacles in these areas, I just naturally developed a sense of distrust towards society. And in the midst of all that, my mother's tears were always there. And that's what really hurt me. So whenever I tried to say something positive, whenever I tried to say something hopeful, I would hear the same kind of negative response from Hanmadi, so I just stopped talking. My younger sibling, yes. So even though it was just a simple warning, the important thing is that the reality was different.
Because there can be differences in ideology.
Don't say things that sound like you're opposing. Good words reach birds, while bad words reach walls. Choose your words wisely, as saying the wrong thing can lead to immediate trouble.
Kim Bok-nal will find out.
Because we're colleagues, it's good to talk nicely, but when I'm in trouble, my colleague doesn't say a word.
Turner water.
Hyung goes somewhere, takes care of things, and when he works hard. If you want to do the right thing, even if it's hard, grit your teeth and push through and survive. We have no way to do it. If we miss this opportunity, it's over. With things like this, there's nothing I can say to help you survive, so just hang in there. In that situation, I tried to raise the issue by calling out my younger sibling, and I tried to speak up with a firm voice. If you look at it that way, if strange noises are heard by the neighbors, won't they naturally become suspicious? In that situation, first of all, our comrade is someone with a positive mindset, and I am someone with a rather negative mindset. That's right. You know, that's why I didn't think the sound I heard was anything special at first, because I had heard similar sounds several times before, so I didn't really think much of it. I knew I had to escape, but I just couldn't bring myself to actually do it. It wasn't that I didn't want to, but every time I thought about leaving, I would hesitate and end up staying. So now I feel like I have to survive here. Then the basic motivation was that this person was able to gain the strength to act out of love. So, for the sake of my wife and my future life, I decided to take the high-speed train forward. So this became the motivation for me to make a firm decision in my heart. So I made a plan that I had to start anew, and whether it was a job or a place to live, I had no freedom in the situation I was in. It took a lot of money. Honestly, in North Korea, spending hundreds or thousands of dollars like that, in Korean terms, that's a huge amount of money. In our country,
a few $100s, a few $1,000s, you might think of it that way, but in North Korea, that could be enough to live on for a year or even 10 years.
That kind of money could even be enough for food. In North Korea, even with a year of hard work and saving, people can barely manage to save $100. This was a huge amount, like $150, $300, so it was enough to live on for a while. That's why even the guards received a lot and let us go.
That's how it was, and then
they called it Jonryonji, and it was rare to be transferred from a forced labor camp to a regular prison. Usually it was the other way around, from prison to forced labor. It depended on the circumstances, but it didn't happen often.
Since I was in the security department, I knew about those things. Yonan, Beichon, and the Johnson area of Yonan, as well as the Johnson area of Gangryong and Ongjin, and the Johnson area of Yongyeon. If you look at these regions, they're all border areas. So naturally, movement or migration was very restricted there. And it was even more so in those places. There had to be a pass, or you had to be registered to enter. Back then, people from other regions had difficulty moving around, and it remains the same today.
So, what was the purpose of making you defect that way? First of all, I couldn't betray our comrades for just a little bit of comfort. Now, I have to find my own path, and since it's a long road, I have to walk it alone. I thought, I have to do this on my own. So with that mindset, I just kept going, kept walking, and that's how I made it.
All right, Gyeoju.
Taego, I'm doing the cleaning, and even though I communicate with the cats, I make sure to communicate clearly with them.
Gyeoju, 무작정.
There are things you can do.
No, and a little bit.
If Soo-won marries Hyun-jae's woman, things will get a little complicated. He even promised to marry Kang Young-gun's woman.
Jong-hee and Wipu.
I need to talk about this publicly since it's already known, but it was just part of my plan to hide my embarrassment.
My wife also.
In the meantime, I had to leave my wife behind and come here.
Because I got forgiveness.
It's something I can talk about openly now. So that's how I ended up hiding my feelings behind a strong front. I wanted many things but tried to restrain myself. While doing so, I attempted to buy a bag and ended up getting hooked on Corona. When coronavirus disease 2019 broke out, our colleagues at the time, including myself, were all worried and anxious. But for us, it wasn't just about overcoming anxiety. This was a matter of survival. My younger sibling became more determined during the coronavirus disease 2019 period.
Hyung-ae was strongly against defecting to South Korea, no matter what. At the time, I had to be honest, so I did it that way. But then I thought, if that's the case, I'll defect. That turning point came when the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic broke out.
That's right, yes, that's what happened. During the coronavirus disease 2019 situation, did people around you die of starvation? Also, didn't the control over people's lives get much stronger? Or didn't the state's control become much stronger through strong laws? So in terms of legal issues, it means that surveillance has been strengthened and both society and the law have become more oppressive. Compared to the past, even rumors and gossip are now closely monitored by authorities. Previously, they didn't pay much attention to such talk, but now they're closely watching even those small voices. So even our peers used to be able to hide and live like this, and there was a kind of leeway. In other words, it was a situation where the intention of the authorities to suppress was not so strong.
It's okay.
Because that's the entrance to the mouth. If you kill someone at home and just bury them, even if you cover it up, the smell will eventually come out. So you have to cover it up well.
So that's why
In that situation. Also, the wooden ship, most of it is made of wood, and the wood is currently being stored separately. But since they can't manage the storage properly, water keeps getting in. And since it's wood, after 3 years of not managing it, that's why it's all rotten. During the coronavirus period, they didn't bring it out, so the ship itself just got damaged and couldn't be used, and now they're just dealing with it as it is. So that's why it's just left like that now. That's why our livelihood has become so difficult. So my younger brother got angry too. It's easy to feel betrayed by the party. I mean, I've been loyal to the party for years, but what have I gained from it?
and if I have to pay back the money during that time anyway,
I have to eat and live on my own too. So during that time, both emotionally and physically, we had a lot of worries. But looking back, I realized that my sense of responsibility for the family was so strong that I never thought about why I had to survive in that situation.
At that time, Hyung's words were a bit off.
I thought maybe I was thinking wrong about what Hyung said.
Seeing that, I was startled and thought, even if I don't do what Hyung said right now, someday I'll have to.
But unlike other people, our family has always been very self-conscious. It's not that he was just saying it because he saw it, it's just that people are like this, siblings. As a member of the National Assembly, like my younger sibling, I now have to be social. However, at my core, I'm just an ordinary person. I don't want to admit that I struggle with socializing or mingling with others. He's talking about his own pride, Our younger sibling's pride was really strong, so he just couldn't admit it until the end.
That's what happened. In that situation?
So I didn't think that way, and I didn't mean it like that.
But before you came to Korea, you filmed your inner feelings like this and you decided to do it, so you started filming. How did you come to think about filming? I thought I would just film, but before I defected, I had a cell phone, but I didn't really think I had to film and bring it with me. Hangul.
When I listen to things like television or radio, I see that there are actually people in Hanguk who like our North Korea, the North Korean regime. So you can look at North Korea or even admire it, and is that what you call loyalty to North Korea? I don't know exactly what they said or why, but there are people who like the North Korean regime. Even within Korean society, there are still some connections and ties between people. That's what I mean.
If you say something like that, that's how it is, but weren't there people in higher positions who weren't like that? There were even people who said that Kim Il-sung's residence and Kim Jong-il's office work should be kept secret. 글자원?
Well, up to that point, I don't really have much to say. I mean, it's there, but...
So, after seeing that, you should keep your mind open and try filming without any preconceptions.
So, when you just look at it with words, even to Nam Jo-sun, back then when I was living in Bukhan, even in my eyes at that time, even to Nam Jo-sun, it seemed like there were a lot of people in Nam Jo-sun who were also doing humanitarian activities. The work those people were doing seemed clear, but their voices weren't heard and not many people paid attention to them.
that's how it was. So
I just assumed those people were good by nature and believed them like that. Or maybe they just need certain people, so they use them. That slogan. Because there has to be a slogan. If you want to do something, there has to be a slogan. If you want to keep something, there has to be a reason. So it's not that people like the North itself, it's just that they don't know the real reason. So it's not that they really like North Korea, but rather they want to show that they are different, that they are realistic, that they are thinking in a good way, and that they want to show the image of North Korea inside them is like this. It's not just about pretending or trying to look good or trying to fit in or trying to act a certain way. It's just that coincidence is a part of everyday life. So it's just an ordinary day. Wherever I go, whether I'm working at the market or meeting someone or just walking around, it's all just natural. It's not because of anything special. It's just something that happens in everyday life, just ordinary things. When people see markets in Korea, they view them as traditional markets, and that's how it is.
Honestly, it was shocking for me too, but
Actually, like when I first saw those shocking scenes, I was surprised too. But it's not just anything. It's really those images that get more shocking the closer you get to the real thing. Only if it's really a shocking market, that's what it is. In the end, the security guards who are supposed to keep an eye on things just stand around, chat and smoke. There's really no one there. It's just that sometimes when the celebrity like Mr. An comes out, they grab the crowd and push them back, but that's it. They just push and then go back. It's not just that they're women or that they're young. Even the women who are just standing there get slapped right away, and the security guards just push and hit them. The security guards and guards act like that, and the party officials just stand in the back and watch. They just shout things like, "Move quickly," and only say a few words, and that's it. Crackdowns near the marketplace are usually carried out by security guards or public security officers. The party officials just stand by and give orders, and that's all they do.
in reality, it's the party officials who are worse.
They're the ones who give orders, but it's the security agents and law enforcement officers who actually carry out the actions and make arrests, even if they don't want to.
Because they're the people on the side of the law.
So when you see that, you have to be careful. If you keep talking about those specific things, it seems easy, but in reality, it's much harder. Those are things that I do myself, so I don't think about whether it's fair or not. So that's why people are very sensitive about their surroundings. If you listen to the camera shutter, that's the end right there. That's how you capture everyday life. That's how it turns out.
When you watch the video, it feels like you're really living a good life. Jo-hee only shows us what she wants to show us in North Korea, but isn't it the same that she only shows us what she wants to show us in South Korea as well? But it's crucial to reveal the stories of the hidden people, the ordinary lives that are often overlooked. Now I'm considered the breadwinner in my family, but there are still a lot of people like Jae-sunim. And I wonder how my mother is living and also how my sister-in-law is living. How did you bring up the topic and how did you approach it? I think there must have been someone who clearly said they couldn't do it, but how did you bring it up to everyone?
Other people probably weren't convinced so easily, right? I think you must have had to persuade them, right?
Yes, it wasn't difficult.
They had to be convinced. So now, when our colleagues are in a situation where they only have limited information and are anxious, our colleagues who know the information first can save the rest of us. So even my younger sibling was the most important in that household, and because of that, he had to take on the most responsibility. That's just how people are. They naturally listen to the person who provides for them. There weren't many people who could stand up to him, so that's how things were. So my younger sibling is Cho-nam. Back then, he joined the military police, and he had to pay a lot of money just to get in. He endured the military police as well, so it's a very real story. Cho-nam Jangmonim and our younger sibling were very active in that house, doing a lot of work for the children and the world. It wasn't just about social status. They were like children themselves. Even after all their work, they still cared for our younger sibling and helped them survive. As for that part, I heard more of a story than a rumor. If I have to be honest,
I just followed along as it was. Yes.
well, that's what it meant. The part that was the hardest for me was the part where Jung-hoi's mother had the hardest time. That's Jung-hoi's mother. Yes, so Jung-hoi's mother is very much like that. In the past, Jung-hoi's father passed away about 10 years ago, so she was very frustrated at that time. But she lived for 10 years without her husband, and after her husband passed away, she had to take care of her children by herself. She raised them and so on. She also worked hard to support the family, so it's not like she just spent money carelessly. Starting a new business comes with many challenges, especially in the beginning.
At that time,
I couldn't do it on my own, so I had to rely on my mother for everything, from food to daily necessities. My mother supported me a lot. So if I had to live on my own, the support my mother gave me was really huge. So overall, our An Hwan family was special, but among the An Hwan family, the person who stood out the most was my mother. So that's why my mother's role was so huge that we, her children, couldn't even compare. From my mother, because she was a parent, from my mother, he lent money and managed the finances for my mother, so you couldn't just see him as a rich man. He ran a private loan business, so he had his own work. And that's why people in the neighborhood didn't call him a businessman, but called him a money lender.
That kind of money lender?
So he would lend money to people, receive money from others, and that's what he did for a living. He would sometimes receive food from people who couldn't pay him back, and he would also accept crops as payment for the work he did at their homes.
Father, you mentioned earlier that you weren't sure, but did Father really make a lot of money this way? Jeohui.
Father, you did business in Amari illegally.
It's illegal business.
He was in the loan shark business. In North Korea, people who do loan shark business are punished by law. Of course. Me too.
While I was catching people who were dealing in antiques.
Ah, that's right. It was strange.
In the crowded streets of Kaesong, I approached a man who claimed to be an antique dealer from the city. He carried a letter of recommendation and some antique goods as proof. But you know, antique dealing is a legitimate business. The people who deal antiques have a lot of money. If it's illegal, it's not allowed, at least in that society.
They do it to make a living, but it's prohibited in our country. Is the antique business also legal in South Korea? Dang Yeon-soon?
Of course, but it's a cultural asset. We may joke around, but that's still a cultural asset.
That's a crime. I think there are even species that do that. In North Korea? No, I'm not saying that, but I think Koreans have similar thoughts too. When we hear about a fixed price for rice, we tend to buy and sell things with each other in our neighborhood, which I believe is similar.
Antiques, which are cultural assets, are typically bought and sold.
In such cases,
That's illegal. But if you buy or sell something just because someone told you to, that's not illegal. However, if you get inside information and use it to buy or sell, that's illegal.
that was my business, and I did it with Mr. Abionim, and I also did that. So that's why I was in the gold business. I made a lot of money quickly by moving around the gold regions, buying and selling gold in various places.
But I lost everything.
I bought and sold, and that's how I made a lot of money. God helped me manage that cycle well. I borrowed money from my father, used that as capital, and then used it again with my mother. That's how I managed things, raising my children while eating and living.
So that's how it was.
Your mother's history is long, and your mother is also... She was the center. So even though there were many children, if she said, let's do it this way, everyone would follow. She wasn't someone who would just go along with others. So your mother was the most difficult person to deal with. But for us siblings, even though we each lived our own lives, there were many times we came together, and there was always some stress in trying to please our mother. Each of us had our own burdens, and my younger sibling, who lived separately for a long time, felt stressed when persuading our mother. So each of us took on our own responsibilities, and my younger sibling said he would persuade his own family members. So I persuaded my wife and my mother, and my younger sibling persuaded his own family members. Persuasion often takes time. For instance, my mother would keep refusing until the very end, even if she only declined once. But after saying no, she would keep grumbling and complaining, and that's how things usually went. I couldn't say it was a special place, but for us siblings, it felt like there was always something special about it. So it wasn't just a simple thing. I said I would go out to play, but then I didn't go out, and that's how these problems came up. I think that's why there was always some tension. From what I can see, it's just simple.
But then Johi.
From your perspective, Johi, you seem to have eaten a lot of small things, and you ate big food for the kids.
So Johi?
My mother is very determined, and there are so many things she has kept bottled up inside for the sake of the family. She couldn't let them out, so she kept them in, but if she talks about them even a little, she gets emotional. That's how she is. And that's also something that, if you look at it, is a habit. This is something that in the countryside is passed down from generation to generation, and it's also basic. That's how it is. So there are certain times when the price of rice goes up, like when you have to buy rice and save up money, and when you receive rice, the timing for saving up is usually between May and June, or between September and October. The answer is,
Most of North Korea?
getting enough to eat is hard, but starting a business is also tough initially. Most people start small and gradually expand their business over time. But
We can...
that's May 7th in South Korea. We arrived in Korea in May, leading to our current situation. My mom couldn't come initially, making things awkward at first, and even now it's still a bit uncomfortable, you know? Yes, that's right, but
Even now my mom is still hurting, but among the people who received the most money from her, there were those who liked her.
so since it's gone, I'm grateful.
I'm really thankful.
Those people, among them, there are brokers and businesses that target funerals. And also, on the other hand, there are also people who are in a difficult situation because they have no relatives. And in that case, many people are grateful that we have become their family.
The hardest thing about saving money was telling my mother.
It was the hardest to persuade my mother.
Persuading people like my mother to get things like water, Wi-Fi, and heating was difficult. Each required a different approach, but convincing my mother was the hardest.
Well then, there were things like that in the process of persuading. Persuading my mother and brother in China to defect from North Korea was tough. Many people had similar concerns, but convincing a family of 9 is especially difficult. Some were more worried about the risks than anything else. How did you manage to do it?
But did you ever think about defecting while riding the boat? I talked about it before, but since the distance is so close, this is considered the best route. But when we worked, there were people who couldn't even feed themselves, people who couldn't even get one name, and about 100 people who couldn't make it. But if you endure and hold on, you definitely get a chance. If you hold on to that chance, you succeed. That's how it all started. Before the incident, Mr. Abe told me the real situation, and that's what he said. That was actually something I heard from Mr. Abe before, so it was his thoughts. That's why I accepted his opinion. Our colleague went out and for 15 years he tried to find that structure, that clue, but he couldn't put it into practice. But now, since we want to move on, our colleague and I and the rest of the team are just watching what kind of actions our colleague will take, whether he'll quit, whether he'll change jobs. So it's just a matter of waiting to see if he'll leave right away or if he'll leave after some time. That's the situation we're in. So depending on the situation, we just have to see where he ends up. I also worked in the gold business, and during the time of the coronavirus, I had a similar job.
I did that and other things too.
Compared to before, during the coronavirus period, the business went really, really well. Is that why you quit? In North Korea, Kim Jong-un banned selling food at the marketplace, so people couldn't sell food. Then how do they make a living? Food sales were banned without providing rations. Instead, money was formally given to buy food, but it wasn't rations.
In the country of Jangsa, at that level, it's essentially a North Korean system of self-reliance. Listening to Kim Jong-un, it's merely words and nothing more. If people aren't allowed to sell rice in the market, the old distribution system for North Korean citizens must be reinstated to ensure they have access to sufficient food. Prohibiting rice sales without providing an alternative seems misguided.
That's right. If you go that far, people will have a hard time. That's how it is.
That's right. Then 9 family members rowed the boat and crossed the river.
현자 동생?
So they got on the boat themselves and crossed over.
Yes, with my younger sibling while praying. I became the planner who tried to buy that boat. Since I bought the boat separately, my younger sibling's opinion was different, so we decided to communicate as siblings. So I just acted independently, but it became a bit awkward, since we didn't tell each other about buying the boat. We ended up not knowing what the other was doing, so it felt like we were competing with each other. That's why it became a bit awkward. Honestly. My younger sibling was just in North Korea. My sibling's will was so strong that I didn't even think about taking them with me at that time. Their determination was just too strong. So in my own way, I thought I would just quit my job and quit my studies, and then I started writing a letter to try to get on the boat, to try to leave by boat. But then I realized my younger sibling was much more stubborn than I had anticipated, which led me to question why they were behaving in such a manner. That's right. So there's definitely a difference. Our type is the kind of person who eats and lives right away without any savings. But this person, because of gathering people, can't even go out to work during the corona period, but still survives. So there must be something. That's what I thought. Haru came home and listened to the story again. So I can't acknowledge it. No, I have to think about what to do. I just changed my hobby recently too.
It has to be realistic. Money.
You have to change your way of thinking.
People say you have to follow the world, follow the trends and all that, but if you change your mindset,
No, I can't either.
and I want to ride a boat, but if I get on a boat and change my mind, that's not right. Now is not the time to change my mind, but since acting is my job, I have to be able to do it. Now, Corona is over, and after Corona ended, I was so happy that I almost died talking. Will Kim Jong-un open the road, not Doldegari? Since it's almost over, it should be resolved quickly. At that time, I couldn't go out either. Because of the corona period, I couldn't go to work. Don't blindly trust people based on their appearance or kindness. Exercise caution when entrusting something to someone. If the situation improves, I can return to work. If not, the boat's value might increase over time, so it's not a loss. And if it doesn't work out, I can still make money. So that was my goal when I bought it. He said if things didn't work out, he wouldn't say anything. But if the conversation dragged on, he would get upset and leave. Then the next day, he wouldn't come back until morning. After talking, we ended up drinking together. And as we drank, we started to open up to each other. We shared our stories, and then more stories came out. And that's how it went. I just made a sound in my throat, that sound you make in your throat. And then as this person kept talking for a long time, I realized that's just how it goes when someone talks for a long time. This is Guy Said Buell. I just went out and somehow ended up like this. He bravely reported it to the police. Dongzeng is the one who yelled. Continuing with food. If you keep talking like this with both sides, you look at it and then the words just come out right away. No, I knew this line. I thought it was this kind of style, so I just felt the vibe of the previous part. But the line that was made before, I didn't know that line until now, so I just kept repeating yum chong, yum chong. So now it's like I'm just expressing the feelings of betrayal I felt. So I just said those words out of anger, but later on I realized it was an overreaction. That's right, we just ended up like this together. We just got frustrated, and as we talked, we realized our economic backgrounds and values match, so that's how it happened. Honestly, I didn't even know if he was really frustrated or not, since we weren't close, so I couldn't really tell if he was being sincere. If we combine my wisdom, the chances of success are high. There were a lot of economic problems during the corona period. Let's deliver the food. In the past, if you relied on the government, you could live as a leader. But as this system grew, the more it grew, the more the certainty of being able to live disappeared. So in the middle of the 3 ships, they put 2 big ships on the inside and a small ship in the middle and tried to repair the small ship. They repaired the ship, and even the sailors had to be replaced, and the people were starving, so they had to get new people and replace the old ones. So that's how I barely managed to get about 100,000 won. I borrowed money, bought the engine, installed it, and repaired the ship. So while I was repairing the ship on one side behind me in the same area, they were also repairing things like nets.
I was preparing weapons.
When it comes to weapons, I tried to do it in a traditional way, but I couldn't think of anything, so I just did it like that.
I don't think I prepared everything, so that's why.
I was sure that if I just waited, something would happen eventually. Gogol made the bomb. It was Gogol's bomb, yes.
This is when Kim Il-seong threw a red pepper powder bomb at Hangil Yongmyong Market in Bukhan.
Did he do that? So people say that Kim Il-seong learned that method from somewhere.
Well, that's how it is.
It's not something to be proud of either. So you just cover the chicken with flour, then dip it in the batter, just enough to coat it, and then fry it in oil. That's how you get that crispy chicken. That's how it is. Even if it's just a trivial thing. Right above. If you cross the high tide line, the wind blows you away. If there's no wind, you can walk a little farther. Yeah, it's the same as the red pepper powder that's been spread out. Even if you spread it on the front line, the wind will blow it away. But if you have a little bit of weight, it can fly about 1 meter in a dry room.
Like that too?
3 meters can fly. Whether you eat it or not, whether you know it or not, just take it. In the north, I went with my friends to the market, ate some salt, ate some soju, and wandered around all night. Due to the strict lockdown during the coronavirus pandemic, North Korean security agents and soldiers stationed along the border had opportunities to make significant money, even as the country tried to tighten border control. The merchants I knew weren't just quietly doing business, but rather they would openly go out on the main roads and do business, and they would say that they were only out for a short time at night, but in reality, they were out there all night. So, in addition, they would go to the main market, and under the pretense of night patrols, they would crack down on merchants and extort money from them. When they would collect the money, They would call out 2 names and say, security guard, come here. And then 2 people would go, they would patrol together, and after a while they would go around and then come back. After that, they would call out the next 2 names, and those 2 would go out and patrol and then come back. They kept repeating this. So everyone took turns going out in pairs, patrolling, and then coming back.
They were coming in and then...
So we just kept our heads down and stayed quiet, and then we just stood there and got caught during the inspection, so we ended up getting punished. Chapi, this is what happened. So we just went through the inspection, and then we'd look around and ask, where did he go? Where did she go? That's how we found out. The ones who knew would just keep it to themselves, and the ones who didn't know would just get caught and punished. That's how it was back then. That's just how it was. So I thought, if I use this, it'll work. So this was before the coronavirus. So in 2018, I delivered for about a year. I delivered in Gwangju, which I know well. And I also tried delivering in other neighborhoods. I even went to other neighborhoods and tried delivering there once. And since I know Gwangju, I delivered there too. Always. So because of that, from that area to the next area, there are always delivery fees. Because of the delivery fees, now when we start delivering, we check the map and see how long it will take to get there and how long the delivery will take.
And if they follow us...
The ever-present patrol boats are continuously monitoring, making escapes challenging as they can quickly pursue and apprehend fleeing individuals. It takes a lot of time for them to get moving and chase after us because the patrol boats are really big and have to pull up their anchors. So even if they notice us, it takes a while for them to actually start moving.
It takes a lot of time because they're slow.
If you go clunk, 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 the propeller turns, and the old propeller and the engine set, when you turn them on, it takes a while for the ship to start moving. So that's why the ship moves so slowly like this. So that's why the propeller is connected, and rather than propulsion, it's more like a speedboat motor, so it just follows along. That's why the propeller is always ready to move at any time. The time it takes for the speedboat to catch me depends on various factors, such as the number of Special Forces members on board. These variables must be calculated multiple times beforehand. So if there's an NRL section, the southern part of the NRL is the same. This is the southern part. But if there's a neutral zone in the middle, there's a common economic area in the middle line, and you can't enter that area. It's a completely restricted zone. That's why even North Korean civilians can't enter that area. And it's strictly controlled. It's the same for South Korea. South Korean civilians also can't enter that area. So in that common area, there are only a few miles where you can pass through. But in that area, I never worked in the daytime, not even for a few years. There are a lot of living creatures in there, in this area. But if you try to catch them by going out on a boat, you can't really catch them. But if you just go right in, you can catch a lot. There are more people on the boat than in the sea, and that's just how it is.
It's said that even in the Yellow Sea, you can't get seafood like clams, fish, or octopus from the shore due to overfishing from the large population.
They say they don't come down anymore.
I know the birds know, the creatures and the fish all know. If I go down to the north side area, my life will be over. No.
They say if you go down, that's what happens. That's what they say.
Even if you don't do anything, that's the situation. So if you go into that area and get caught, that's illegal. It's illegal, and the punishment is different. If you get caught illegally, you could be detained there several times. So if you go in there, leave your stuff and work, you could get deported.
중말 단속버터가
If that's the case, you have to watch the time until the crackdown is over. Every time that happens.
It's a regular occurrence, not just a one-time thing. It usually takes around 30 minutes to reach Dinak. If the road is clear, we could arrive in about an hour or slightly less. But with traffic, it might take longer. If we leave the station for the village, we may miss the elders, who likely took a different route. Usually there are about 3 detectives on the team, but in this case there was 1 AK company soldier and a military police officer as well.
1-person boat.
There was a driver, but the machine gun was installed, so the driver had to operate it and also take care of the machine gun. That's not how it's supposed to be, so this was a very unusual situation. Out of 3 people, 1 clearly has to drive the boat, so he stays there, and the other 2 come up onto the boat. If they come up close at point-blank range, the high-caliber gun, and then like that. If you spray water up to 1,500 tons, it gets even better. Since there are original weapons like this, that's why the sailor's pride was always high.
Even if you get hit, it doesn't hurt that much. That was my thinking.
So the sailors are currently repairing the ship.
And on one side,
right now, they're using the original method to make the weapon. They have conducted multiple simulations to understand how the explosion works.
they've done several simulations, so that's why they're so confident about it. Crossing the river will lead to our capture, interrogation, or worse, within minutes, according to their simulations. Before this, I did that job, and after our comrade finished training and drove a few times, we did the simulation again. That's why our comrade went through the simulation several times. I also thought about the situation where the enemy regime would chase us, so I tried to come up with a plan in case I got caught.
That's right. Now,
But this simulation,
But when you actually do it yourself, it's a little different. Even though this is a simulation, you keep coming back and repeating the simulation process. But this is just a simulation, not the real process.
there was no such situation. Nothing like that happened. When Han Cham was going, he also got an additional sentence. He got an additional sentence, and when he received that additional sentence, his feelings were really complicated. There's nothing more to say. There was no plan, but I ended up thinking this way. It was the day Pado was supposed to arrive, so I kept gazing at the sky, wondering if the boat, the lights, or something else would appear. My eyes kept darting around in anticipation. Wuhan.
Because it's Paradong.
If Joey does rainmaking, even if it's just for a short time, it's a way to make it rain on the enemy's side when they're about to attack. Compared to the Tanjodong in the Hanmadillo single strain, the intensity is higher, and the bright Tanjodong was used as a secret weapon by the Chinese military. The light was dazzling when shined with a glaring yellowish-white color that appeared almost greenish.
because that's what I do.
So by shining it right at the other person's eyes, that's what I imagine. And when I even prepared for that.
I prepared for that.
And then the length of the sword is about 19.689 inches, so it's that kind of sword. In the north, the swords that are in the family are also registered with the authorities. Everyone knows, the local officials know exactly what kind of knives are in each house. Even if someone asks, how did that knife end up in that house? They know. When the local officials' mothers come, they even open the cabinets and check everything, so they know it all.
That's how strict it is.
But it's not like you can officially bring that up at the village meeting and talk about it openly. I ordered it directly from the head of the market, paid extra for express delivery, and asked them to send 3 knives together. The person who made those 3 was a man, so there were 3 of us, our group, so each of us wanted to have one, but we didn't know how things would turn out. So I put the knives in my waistband, and the waistband was tied with a string. The reason I chose the waistband was because if someone attacked from behind during the fight, I thought I could quickly pull out the knife and defend myself. Sealing it with beeswax was also for safety, to preserve it for a long time.
I don't know.
That's what I left in my memory at that time. But when you need it, you have to have it because you can use it. So I took things like a long string, a high branch, a piece of cloth, and each one had a name. And I also prepared a candle, and I also brought a heavier weight than the opponent. And I did it like that and made a trap for the boat. And our animals, each animal has its own unique characteristics, like giraffes or like white whales.
Things like machine oil and fuel for the boat.
It's not just a matter of a few hours, but even if it's just for a short time, there could be unexpected problems. Based on the flight situation, we packed things like spare fuel that could be useful in case of an emergency, as well as food and water that we could eat if we had to wait for help. And we also brought things like tents, not just regular tents, but ones that can keep us warm, and sleeping bags that can keep us safe, as well as other necessary items. We brought all of those too, just in case.
We also have North Korean clothes.
You know, it's really hard to get those things from the government. They say not to give or hand them over, making it difficult for us to obtain them. Why don't they just distribute them? I didn't get a new uniform. They took all the stuff, but I didn't get a new uniform. On the uniform, there's a badge with Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il together.
That's all.
And
I did it at the National Assembly, but they called it bribery.
Handphone, everything was at the National Intelligence Service.
From the house to the clothes.
Everything, all of it.
Handphones are confiscated, and I can't sleep inside, so I sleep outside. But then, why do you risk your life and cross such a dangerous high wall to come to Korea? Is it to meet your family, or is there another reason North Korean defectors come to South Korea?
That's what they said on the broadcast.
It wasn't a rescue operation or anything like that. At that time, I knew in advance that a ship would be coming through the Yeolgamji area, so I was waiting in the middle of the sea. But even so, it's difficult to directly mention that on the broadcast while making such recommendations. There are certain agreements in place. So that's why they're trying to keep it a secret. Then, if you bring a Korean ship, it's not just about bringing the ship. When a Korean ship comes, what about the Korean crew members? What happens to them? When you first saw the Korean soldiers,
At first, I was just curious.
At first in Japan.
Working in the shipyard? They said there was a color that sparkled on the waves. So I don't know why it happens, but first the fishermen say,
Camouflage combat uniform.
they wore it. So North Korea has military uniforms. There were 3 young men wearing military uniforms, so I wondered if they were soldiers or maybe they were defectors. I was suspicious, thinking maybe they were defectors or not.
So at first they said they would check our identities.
So when you look at it from the front, you don't see people standing guard with guns like you would imagine. Instead, on the wall, on top of the wall, there are dozens of blue tiles lined up, and those blue tiles are shining brightly.
They don't point them at people.
They didn't aim at people.
I was aiming at a person.
Directly at Jeo Hui-han.
I let it go the next day.
I don't think that's it. Then what if something happens?
No, Jeo Hui is a real soldier, but now Jeo Hui is going to be deployed to our Korean ship, then go to the next ship, then come back, and then immediately go on guard duty with a gun.
That was the process of subduing them.
It was almost at the level of being a prisoner.
I wasn't like that.
If I were to explain the reason, it's because there were women and children, so we couldn't do that.
Because we were hungry, we had to take care of the children, so we took care of our comrades and our comrades' children. And we couldn't just leave the weak ones behind. We couldn't abandon our comrades who were weak or the children of our comrades.
But I couldn't let go of the kids I was holding in my arms. The adults kept saying not to panic, but even though they were trying to stay calm, they couldn't help but hold their children and couldn't tie up the men. So the situation was so dire that we couldn't do anything else. Over there,
That's how it was. And then, well, my friend was doing the same thing, so the whole boat was like that. We kept saying, hold on, and then let go, let go. The whole boat was like that, so everyone was just holding on, then letting go, and that's how it went. But because there are kids.
Something like that.
I see. So did you stay at the National Assembly for a while, like with your family?
no, individually.
We're family, but we were all separated. Yes, each of us in a separate room.
Yes, there was. Even my son.
Since it's an investigation process, and we just ate one meal there, and that's about it.
Yes, we met once every few days for a meal.
In the water prison, Seon Seng-nim and the others were together like this, and although we were in the same place, we weren't always together.
Even though we were separated like this, there was always a surveillance camera in the room, so we knew that everything, even our voices, was being monitored. That's the kind of camera it was. Any strange words we said or heard would have been recorded. And like this,
Yuri Byung-gi was within sight of the painter, his eyes tense, and people waited on the other side.
that's right. In this kind of situation,
Putting the table down and sitting across from each other, talking like this, being able to talk comfortably like this, that's about how it was. We did that once a week, just like that.
When I thought about why my family came to South Korea, was it when I was young and came to the country? Or was it when I came to the port by boat? Or was it when I became a government official?
On the 11th, as soon as we got off the boat, my heart was pounding. It was really pounding. I was thinking, am I really entering South Korea now? And I kept checking the global positioning system. And according to the global positioning system, it showed that we arrived around the 11th. As soon as we crossed over, now we just kept wondering how those people managed to do it. And we were really nervous. Now we were just relieved. So
At the National Assembly Investigation Agency and Hanawon, there were families like us who had been there for about 6 months.
no, we weren't together. Even at Hanawon, men and women were separated.
even though they were family, hearing them talk like that, it seemed like the people from the unification department and the staff were trying to keep us apart on purpose. That's how it was. I wasn't in the south, but before the singers
Together in one place,
went to Anseong,
went to Lee-Cherun.
he said that if a man and a woman were family, they would be together. If someone wants to see you, let them. If you want to be separate, be separate. If you want to be together, be together.
He wanted it done a certain way, but some questioned why he didn't do it differently.
Me too. That's why it didn't happen that way. And then after that, things turned out differently, and the people in charge said that's how it was organized. In Korea,
At first I was nervous and awkward.
Was there anything that surprised you while settling down? For me, there was something that surprised me in the north.
when I worked at a market in Wonsan, I noticed that people there don't really bargain, even though they run markets. In North Korea, there are various tricks used in the market. That covers the basics, which surprised me as well.
I don't have any because I bit on stones, especially for ordinary people.
They even eat grass and tree bark. That's why their teeth are just ruined. No, this is just because in the early days, the wife would take the baby from here to the hospital and then bring the baby back from the hospital to here. and only the wife would do this, so I had to take care of the baby more, and that's why the wife developed postpartum depression. And initially, I couldn't even ask for water, so I had to handle everything myself after leaving Hanawan. I was nervous about tasks like cooking and cleaning and worried about managing on my own. I was so anxious that I couldn't sleep well until I settled down. But I realized there were people who could help. So I kept going step by step since it was my first time. Anyway, even at home, I did almost all the chores for about a month. When I cooked rice in North Korea, we washed the rice first. In South Korea, they cooked the rice without washing. Even now, I realize that washing the rice is not about soaking it in water, but just cooking it without soaking. In South Korea, washing rice is not a common practice. However, in North Korea, washing rice is done not just for cleaning, but also to remove impurities from the rice. We put it in water and stir it around to check for anything strange. If there's something odd, we pick it out. That's the reason we do it, not just to wash it. Even if we lose some. There's not a single stone left, which I found strange. We stir it like when cooking rice, picking out anything odd. I wondered if it was really rice bran, since Park Han-mei wouldn't pick out the stones by hand, which could explain why there were no stones left. At first I read it like that. After reading it, I thought it was strange. I repeatedly read the long sentence, noticing a knife on the table, and then realized its purpose for the sentence's length. No, it's strange. This is Nam Jo-seon's daughter, Dolai. Dolai is supposed to go to Gabyeon and then leave again, but Doldo Gabyeon is not right. If you read it carefully and keep mumbling it, you realize something's off. But Dolai never went to Hanse. Actually, repetition is correct. Even if it's a difficult word, just repeat it at least 3 times and you'll get used to it. That's how it works. If you do it, you have to do it right, but even after doing this 5 times, nothing changes and the rice doesn't move at all. Since it was strange, I kept wondering why, so I kept doing it and tried to scoop the rice out from the inside. That's how I ended up eating it. I ate the rice cautiously, chewing carefully to check for any hard objects. While I was chewing, suddenly, there was nothing. I tried to find the stone, but there was no stone. So I was amazed. It was unbelievable. So at the Hanwha Center, when I first started, there weren't many stones that I could break with a hammer. There were only 2 or 3 stones that were about 2.2 pounds or even less than 2.2 pounds that I could break with a hammer. Initially, they provide a few bags of rice, roughly 2.2 pounds or less per bag. But when you eat that rice, since you just moved into a new house, only the people who just moved in get to use the highest quality rice first, not the people who have been there for a while. I thought they bought the best rice for us, so I ate it thinking it was special. That's how I ate it. Next, at the community center, they gave us rice. But when I opened the 22 pounds bag of rice, I realized just by looking at it that it wasn't the same good rice as before. At first, the small bags of rice I received looked like really good rice, but when I actually opened the bag, I realized it wasn't good rice. It was just ordinary rice. Yeah, the packaging was like that too. And the same goes for the packaging. I felt like the shelf life would be short, and it seemed like the rice would only last for a short period of time. The rice looked old and different from regular rice. Managing the process carefully and storing it well is crucial. You have to store it well. Though I noticed nothing on the back of my hand, so I found it strange and thought it was from the rice. Nunarae. At first I thought, well, only Koreans would like this, so I wondered if it would sell well, but it was my first time seeing it.
At that time, also, when I was nervous or scared, I learned a lot about Korea while I was in North Korea. First of all,
so that's why I was curious.
I decided to defect. But when I experienced South Korea firsthand, there were many differences compared to what I had learned about it in North Korea. A lot of things were different from my expectations. Basically,
first of all, there were a lot of things that were completely different. When you look at people living, you see that they transfer schools, change jobs, or move to different places for various reasons. Say, if you don't do it, you have to submit all sorts of documents like a criminal background check, and even if you get accepted, you have to submit all those things. And when you look at it, there are a lot of people who don't do those things. But since we live in a completely different world from before, it's not easy, so it's really hard. No, it's just that everything is different. That's just how it is in the North. Like if you want to sell a product like a program, you can't just sell it as is. You essentially need to introduce the product first. I only knew the basics, such as how to introduce something, so I just did it to that extent. Honestly, I haven't really learned or handled things in detail like this before. It's so different from what I've seen before. Back in Seojeon, I used to handle computers and do handphone work, and it's the same with handphones here too. In North Korea, only the most basic messages are available. Just receiving and sending. Phone calls, voice recordings, and similar internet services are unavailable. In that situation, a lot of things were influenced by the new culture that came from here. And most of all,
What was the hardest was
that was it. So when I came to Korea,
I was nervous and there were things I didn't understand. And when I look back, it was really tough.
for example, there were things like this. One day I entered a public restroom where people were talking loudly, laughing, and making noise I couldn't understand. I accidentally entered a restroom with women inside due to a confusing sign. After quickly leaving and double checking, I confirmed it was indeed the men's restroom. A woman had also mistakenly entered and stood there looking embarrassed. So I went back in to check and I clearly saw the urinals. I thought, wait, what's going on? Then I realized that the person standing there, even though she looked like a woman with long hair, makeup, and a skirt, and even had heels on, when I looked closely, I saw that she was actually a man. So it was a man who was dressed as a woman using the men's restroom. That's how it was. Yeah, that's what happens when you become too free. It's not just about being free, but when people act too freely, you end up with all sorts of strange people. So you have to be careful. If you just let everything go, you might end up with all kinds of weird situations and you could even get hurt. I could end up like that too.
If you even wore a school uniform and stockings, yes, that's really strange.
A person with a strange mind isn't like that. I just looked at it and just got curious. I wonder if that's a pervert or if it's just someone who's a pervert. It's just a story I heard on the news last year, but I guess there are people like that. But then I
discovered Lee Cherun and learned about him in this group. Aside from outsiders, I got to know him through the people here. What do you do when you come? You do a lot of broadcasts?
I participated, but the first time I did a public broadcast was then. Before that, it was British Broadcasting Corporation News or Japan's Tokyo Broadcasting System and Reuters, so it was mostly foreign media.
I've been on many broadcasts and continue to do so.
I'm still here. And when it comes to foreign broadcasts, I often appear as a basic issue. At that time, I didn't reveal my real name, and I went by Kim Mosick and used nicknames like Backmoss, so I didn't reveal my face in various ways. I processed everything anonymously until recently when I finally revealed my face. At that time, our comrade was so nervous that he couldn't even speak.
I was hiding in the crowd at that time.
Our comrade didn't appear on any other broadcasts, but only on that program for the final broadcast. It was the first time he revealed himself publicly on the final broadcast. Our comrade did that, and then he introduced himself to me, so that's why I went out. When was it? In Korea?
Because I'm living here, so it's good.
The food is good, and everything else too.
There are some downsides, of course, but overall,
it's a good thing.
it can exist in the world.
There's no such thing. So if I were to be born again in my next life, I want to be born in Korea again and live as a free person. Why do you want to be a free person again?
Because it's Korea.
Republic of Korea.
It's the national law. It's the national law.
Culture is culture and the people are the owners of the country. Please keep your promises first.
We need to protect the weak a lot. Let's keep our word.
If the situation is like that, even if the weak person listens to the strong person's words and tries to follow me, if the weak person is stubborn and I get annoyed and yell at them, I still have to understand and take care of the weak person. Even if I get upset and write them off, I still have to listen to the weak person's side. That's a bit excessive. Some things cross the line and there are far too many of them. If you put it that way, even from a legal perspective, it's like the weak person is making a lot of excuses and complaints, but people still listen to what the weak person says and take their side.
That's why. In our Republic of Korea,
from the beginning until now, or even just a few days ago, whenever I went somewhere and looked at the people who were working hard with sincerity, I could see that those people didn't have much ability. So rather than working hard with sincerity, they couldn't do it, and that's why I started to think that way. 사씨는 한마디 나보신 가족 나보들. 저 40대 애들하고 초년공이녀. So I drank a lot, but I also thought I had to survive. And I also thought I was lacking in ability. When I heard about their stories, I could understand their feelings deeply. So I thought, that's why they live alone. That's why they live like that. That's why they're like that.
that's right. Anyway,
Someday I would like that too.
to raise a child.
At my lowest point, I gave up my child. This child is precious to me until the moment he leaves home. Or let's say in some society, someone is working and then gets into an accident and dies, then all the pain of that child is mine. But if that child leaves home and meets a woman, even if he lives for a year and dies, all the pain belongs to that woman. That's how it is.
Parents know.
There are no rights. That's the problem. And that's why there are legal issues that aren't handled well. So
Only good things.
not just good things, but also in Korea.
After living here, I wondered why, but the gap between men and women is just too severe, so
They say that unless you are exceptionally talented, you can't make it. So even at home, I do a lot of housework. And when it comes to loving my wife, that's just how it is. So
to that extent,
it's good to do it to that extent, but if you make it too grand, it just becomes excessive. Just keep it simple and moderate. That's it. Even if you die, taxi drivers claim dash cams are for their protection, but they don't truly think or understand it that way. Despite being broke, Mr. Koyo took out his wallet to pay the fare when the taxi driver bluntly asked for it. He didn't have enough money, so he tried to pay with what little he had. The driver insisted on the full fare, leading Mr. Koyo to apologize immediately. When Eo Jeonjo went to the police station, the taxi driver was accused of being a strange person, implying that's what happens if you die.
the taxi drivers in reality,
They even install cameras and do strange things, and if you look at this, you might think they're doing it to protect themselves.
it's not like all Korean women are like that. They prioritize women and listen to women's opinions, and this is a national issue. That's just how it is.
I understand. Some people exploit the system for their own gain. If you experience this situation firsthand as a man, it can be really frustrating and unfair. Please don't misunderstand.
Women, especially some women, there are a lot of foreigners who know about Korea, right? Yes, Korean culture.
That's right, they became Koreanized, didn't they? So now, even between men and women, they introduce themselves and meet, but if you do it too awkwardly, you might not get a job at all. That's how it is, everyone.
They get treated like country bumpkins and all that.
Even when speaking Korean, a lot of people do it in a Korean style. And if you listen to their examples, their humor style is like that, their fashion is like that, and it's the same for both men and women. So when you see someone who can't adapt to Korean, you can immediately tell. They seem innocent, and I just see them as people who live happily. Despite trying to blend in, I'm perceived as a sensitive person who follows trends. Even among Koreans, I'm criticized for this. People see me as sophisticated, but there's an underlying criticism. That's right, North Korea's.
The younger generation, what we call the Jangmadang generation, is referred to as the Millennial and Z generation in South Korea. Since many of these young people have changed, even more are changing, and I think a new history of North Korea is being written that way. Our Lee Jae-hyuk was very sincere when he answered Jesu's question. When was that?
At the hospital.
After listening to the heartbeat, I went to the hospital and heard the heartbeat. At first, I didn't really feel anything. Yong-yong. The sound of the heartbeat is so different from our usual one. Thump, 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 thump. How long has it been? Thump, 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 and then it stops. What should we do? When I heard that, I was really worried.
I was nervous.
I cried.
It's not that there were no tears, but I was much more emotional than before. Actually, no, it's not like tears were coming out, but for the first time, I felt those kinds of emotions. To be honest, it's because I became a parent myself, and I got to know my own parents better, so I think that's why I felt so emotional. Even my tears.
You might think that if I talk like this, I don't have any worries, but I actually have a lot of concerns piling up. I used to say even my tears are words, but recently when I watch movies or something, my tears just come out on their own. That's right,
Because we are in South Korea and we are South Korean citizens, that's why people's minds change like that, really.
They try to be polite and try to stand out.
That's what it is. When I lived in North Korea, I used to hear people say that life was so good, and I would hear the sound of neighbors and kids playing around me, but there were no laughter or tears, no emotions, just those kinds of sounds in my daily life. But yeah, after coming here, I just started from the beginning. I started from the Korean Language Center, then went out into society, got a job and adapted. And my wife did the same, and I did too. We just kept going. So after living here for about a month, I felt like I was living a much better life than before. And then when I first met someone who knew my hometown, that person helped me a lot with adapting. I wanted to go. With nowhere to go, I'd invite others to join me, offering to show them around when visiting places I wanted to see. And somehow I feel like I have a lot of luck left. Honestly, when I look at it, I feel like I have luck. Since I met a lot of good people around me, that's how it was. There was Pastor Geahoe and Pastor Gonsa and his wife often came to our house, so they helped us a lot. That's why those people...
So Yang Pyongin.
I think that's what it was, but...
After that...
Just like this, there's a Buddhist temple here, and there's also one in the north. But the Buddhist temple here doesn't feel as solemn for some reason. So even though there's one in the north, I couldn't go there. But here, when I went, I felt a sense of freedom.
That's what it was. And then...
I don't know why, but I just didn't feel anything before. But suddenly my eyes welled up with tears. That's why I think I became so emotional. I could hear the sound of water and the sound of birds coming from the window, but I didn't even notice them before. Before, I couldn't hear those sounds or feel anything, honestly.
Keep listening and get used to it. Then you won't feel uncomfortable in the mountains or fields. You might wonder why it's like that, but I never really looked at nature's beauty that way before. It's like a sense of relaxation is born in people's hearts. Right now, our music is being performed on many different broadcasts, and there are a lot of interviews with foreign media as well. There are also many lectures and a lot of performances happening. If there are people who want to hear the story of Lee Ryok-si, who overcame hardship with his family and is now living freely in Korea, please contact me and I will get in touch with you directly. And finally, if there are any words you would like to say to our viewers, or if there's anything you want to share, do you have anything to say? Please go ahead. I am in Korea.
And I went through a lot of big and small things. I experienced a lot of things during my 1 year here.
I even got married.
Aji.
I even had a baby.
And not long ago, I had a baby photo shoot and took a family photo with Age. I also had a first birthday party. Recently, I was mostly at home with my family. There were also some unexpected incidents. My younger sibling is very sensitive, so I must handle this carefully.
I wanted to do well, but I kept getting anxious and didn't want to keep piling up bad memories. Last year, there were some tough days at the end of the year. After that, I made my broadcast debut, my very first appearance.
Broadcast appearance.
It was the same, but I couldn't go see it in person, but I was really very nervous and excited. When Chanhyung was in North Korea, there were food shortages and a lot of trouble, but even so, wasn't there still some vitality? I kept dwelling on it, thinking it would be more heartbreaking than witnessing it myself. Many things occurred last year. I want to tell you this story.
The reason I do this is because whenever there are big or small things happening, there are always good people around me who listen to me and comfort me. Among the people of Daihan Mingok, there may be someone who's even kinder than me, but at least I have been blessed, so I haven't met anyone kinder than me yet. I've met a lot of good people. I've met a lot of good people who have helped me a lot, and thanks to them I never felt lonely and received a lot of support. I was really grateful, and I thought I should live my life trying to return this love to others. Looking at the people who live well ahead of me, I want to live well too. And just as I received so much help, I want to give back and live as a proud citizen of Korea. I want to live well as a proud Korean. Are you? Yes.
The second shipment is scheduled for March. And also, our Lee Ryak is delivering glass. He's delivering glass.
And moving forward.
In the future, working in the food industry would be nice. Feeding people and making them happy is something you can do long term. And today, in the same old place, I was able to rest and talk with Shin Il-yong. And I learned a lot about things I didn't know before. It felt like we had time to connect with each other again. I appeared on Lee-Cherun NKTV today, which made me very happy. I hope to return in the future. Thank you.
Here,
I will do my best. Thank you to everyone who watched. Please stay healthy.
Kyung Seafood. Are you still planning to eat? I will eat after I finish, or I will eat after I go to the restaurant and separate the delivery food. Right now, the delivery food, I can't do it. I know, yes, I understand. I know why the delivery didn't come out. I know that the delivery didn't come out because I'm hungry right now. It didn't come out. It didn't come out.